All right, I'm in.
Hey, well, thank you very much for responding to me.
How did you find me?
Well, I did some videos with Jim Willie, and one of the people who commented said you need to look up Darryl Schoon. So I looked you up, and I watched your video on the mortgages, on the banking.
All right.
And I've been telling my family and friends, sell your house.
Yeah, get liquid.
And nobody's listening.
No, it's just I was at a conference in Australia in 2011, and I was talking to a guy, and I said, you know what? If we didn't have these gatherings with each other, the few of us, we'd be sitting in our garage, the door closed, facing the garage door, drinking straight a small bottle of gin. A hip flask, and with nobody there staring at the back of the garage door. Like that's it. You can't. Well, you can't tell anybody.
No, it's I went through and looked at a bunch of your videos, so that boy, you cover the gambit.
Did you get what site did you get the videos on?
YouTube.
Yeah, but was it my Shootworks channel or Jeffrey Mishlov's?
I watched some of both, but I watched mostly your channel.
Okay, all right.
I watched a couple of the videos where you talked about conspiracies. Yeah.
You know what I'm interested in you is that where did you get this fascination with China?
Well, the short story is my father always wanted to go to China.
Really?
And yep. And so
lots of restaurants.
Yeah. Are you Chinese?
Yeah, I'm Chinese.
Oh, okay. Ni shuo Zhongguo ren ma?
Msek gong gan yu.
Oh, so you speak Cantonese?
No. That's no. It might appear I speak Cantonese.
Okay.
But let me. Ni hao. Who is this now?
Oh, I'm sorry. That's Dan.
All right. Hi, Dan.
Hey, how are you? Nice to meet you.
This is Darryl.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
And so I was in China in 1976.
Wow.
Yeah, I heard one of your videos, and
Yeah.
boy, you were there. Woo!
Oh, when they were still wearing blue.
Absolutely. Wow. Yeah.
And I've
talk.
known there's people who have a fascination with China. All right, fascinated like your father. I never had that fascination because I grew up with a mother. My sister was Chinese. My brother was Chinese. My father was Chinese. All right, so I didn't have that fascination. All right, they appeared to be more as an impediment than anything else. All right.
Were your parents born in the U.S. or did they
Oh
emigrate?
yeah. But that stuff lasts. Tyranny lasts. Every time about Chinese family structure, oh yeah, it's codified tyranny with the quote benign purpose, but it's codified. That's what it is. All right. And I'm an Aquarian, or in the Chinese sign monkey, which does not fit well in authoritarian structures, which family structures are. So I had that issue. Right? In fact,
especially Chinese families, very
man, I gotta say though, my parents never put the pressure on me to be a doctor. All right, so that was one thing. All right, thank God for little favors. All right, they had their hands full. It was destiny, But that's why I noticed that you were interested in China. I thought, well, that's really interesting, So I was there in '76. I had when Deng Xiaoping came to the United States in Washington D.C. I had presidential invitations. I was there.
Wow.
I was on Dianne Feinstein China committee. I went to China with Dianne in '82.
Holy cow!
So I was there, In fact, I gave a talk on U.S.-China trade in '82 in Shanghai with the heads of the Shanghai trade delegations. So you can see how effective my advice on China trade was. Look how it expanded. I guess they listened to me.
Absolutely. Well, corporations, when they see that they're able to get rid of their labor and just have the box come in.
Got it. But I had an insight into that even before that, because in those days in China, it was all dog and pony shows. All right. And the earlier you went, the more the dog and pony show was the dog and pony. I mean, we will continue to criticize the policies of Deng Xiaoping and uphold the revolutionary principles of Mao Zedong. You know, and they're all sitting there scared shitless, mouthing the crap. All right? I mean, this is 76.
Yeah.
This is before it fell. It was falling. All right? And then later on, I remember, this is when the insight came to me of what was going to happen. I was in a cloisonné factory. All right? And I don't know if you know what cloisonné is. Cloisonné is, it's a Chinese art form, and they use brass bowls, brass containers, all right? And then they use filigree, they have these factories, and they take these little brass bands of wire, they're bands, and they have all these people sitting there with very fine tools, bending these bands and then soldering them onto the brass bowl and then lacquering the brass bowl. So you had design. I mean, this is intensive work.
Very labor intensive.
Very fine.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, if I was sitting there, they would have fired me.
Yeah.
You know, Mr. Schoon, maybe you ought to go do something else, you know? And I looked at it and I went, wow, these people can do stuff. That's when it just came into my brain, watching this, because it was so intricate. This is back in the late 70s. I'm sitting in a factory somewhere in China, just sort of brain dead, you know, and I go, these people can do things. And eventually they did. So that's that part of that story.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I've spent a lot of time in China, so I can.
Really? When'd you go?
Well, I've been pretty much, I've covered probably half the country.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. My first trip was in 2007 with my dad, and we did a 35-day tour of China.
That's a long time in China.
A long time. Yeah.
That's a long time in China.
Yeah. And
Wow.
I ended up meeting a girl there.
Okay.
And
Long story short,
that's why I kept going back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Destiny. Dharma. This is Dharma.
Yeah. It's, China's been a wonderful experience for me. You know, and Darryl, and that really is what started to open up my eyes because, you know, I was indoctrinated as an American, right?
Well, just like they're indoctrinated as Chinese. The bowl has two sides to it.
Sure. But growing up in the United States, you know, you tend to wave the flag and John Wayne and Apple Pie.
Hey, if you were born in Syria, you'd be a goddamn jihadist.
Probably.
Of course. What's your option?
Right. Yeah. Well,
you know, everybody thinks they're a free thinker. Let them think that.
Right. And so I didn't know what to expect on that first trip, and it was completely different from what I expected. I was 40.
How old were you?
When you went? I was 40 when I went.
Okay, so you pretty much had your Gestalt form.
Right.
And then you go over there. Why were you there that long? Because your dad?
Yeah, because we did an elder hostel tour.
Okay, very good.
Yep. But when I went back, it was fantastic.
Yeah.
They did a great job.
Yeah, okay. No, you weren't sitting there on a bus going from trinket store to trinket store. An elder hostel tour would have been very different.
Yeah, it was very cultural.
Yes, very different.
Cultural. You know, every once in a while they do the trinket routine, but very rare.
Of course.
Yeah, because you paid, the elder hostel tours are more money, so the cheaper tours, they tend to do that to you.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. But it basically, you know, it really opened my eyes that, you know, people are people, right?
Yeah.
People are people.
Yeah, it is.
And
that's the potential and the problem, David.
Potential and a problem. Absolutely. Absolutely. But it comes down to, I mean, I knew right then and there that we were going to have a real tough time as a country trying to compete with China's labor force, you know, because you could see.
They were hungry. They had ability. You know, my uncle, and this takes nothing away from Mexico. All right.
Right.
All right. and because I think all cultures have different attributes. You know, we're all on this planet for a reason. You know, and we're not all here to do the same thing, and that's why we're all given different attributes. All right, like many talents. All right, and each attribute looks down upon the other generally. All right, like you know, the kidneys look with askance at the lungs. You know, bringing in all that stuff. All right, and so the Mexican he was a executive for Nissan quality control. And because that's where they put the car plants, all the you know they were all building in Mexico, NAFTA, get the shit cheap in the United States.
Right. Yeah, there's still a lot of them down there.
Absolutely. And you know NAFTA, Japan was the heir to Edward Deming's quality thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, before World War II, Japan had quality far worse than anybody's. But because of Edward Deming, they became, I mean, holy smokes. And so then they went to Mexico to do their cars there. My uncle told me, he said, yeah, you'd have a quality control guy in the line. Then you'd have to hire some quality control guy to watch the quality control guy. And then you know, it was like piling on because they weren't getting the result. And there was something innate in China was meant to be that way it was, you know. And the way I look at it, because we're all an unfinished product.
Mm-hmm.
All of humanity is an unfinished product. If this is the finished product, we're. I mean, if this is us, we're. You know, my joke is, allegedly on the seventh day, God looked at what and he said, "This is good." All right, and my joke is, I don't think he said that since then. All right.
Yeah.
This is us. So, this is good. This is sort of fascinating. Your background, all right? Because it's. I was looking
like you said, work in progress.
Yeah, we're a work in progress. All right. Okay.
Yeah. There's so much. There's so much going on. I mean, it's funny. Today was one of the Fed meetings, and silver and gold, is up, it's down, it's all over the place, and you must be watching that. Based on what I've seen, you've been talking about silver and gold for a long time. You've been warning people to go out and get it when it was actually extremely affordable. Today, it's not as affordable, and I'm not sure people are running to it now.
The thing about and what I've always said was that gold especially, and silver, because they're precious metals, are barometers of systemic distress.
Mm-hmm.
All right, system distress. And the system is fiat paper money. All right, it has no value. It used to be connected to value. It used to be convertible to value. Paper money never had value per se. It's paper money. But when you legally could take $32 of paper money and go to the Fed and get an ounce of gold in return, it had no value, but it had potential value. You could convert it to value. All right. It's sort of like an IOU. All right. I mean, maybe you have an IOU from me and you're trying to trade it for a car, and the car goes, I don't know this guy, Darryl Schoon. So you know me, maybe I have, and I at that time when I gave you the IOU, I had assets. And you go, no, it's good for it. Well, everybody knew that at a certain point you can go to the Fed, you can go to the Bank of England, you can go to your central bank and turn it in for real silver, real gold. All right, or for dollars which are convertible to it. Okay. Well, when push came to shove, they disconnected it. All right, and they disconnected it because the power and money is a fascinating subject. That was my background in college. I never took an econ course. I was a political science major. So that was always my subtext about change, political change. Power. Power and money are sort of two sides of the same coin, right? And what happened in the United States is that the money boys were very careful about money. All right, they knew they had a goose that laid golden eggs. All right, but the trouble is they had to share custody of the goose with the military boys. All right, and when at the end of the World War II, the military boys got the whiff of power in their nostrils. Before World War II, the United States was always been semi-isolationist. All right? But after World War II, when the smoke cleared, when the radiation started dissipating, we were the only ones with anything. Europe was decimated. I mean, decimated. Japan was burnt. China was nowhere. And we had it all. The closest thing to us was South America. All right? And they were a little more removed, but the Americas were untouched. Everybody else was sort of gone in terms of world power. And so after World War II, we had all the gold. And the reason we had all the gold was this, and very few people know this, is that the Great Depression was a great crisis. All right? And if you read a lot about Roosevelt's confiscation of private ownership of gold. And everybody's bitching about that. Oh, he took our gold, socialists took our goddamn gold, government stole our gold. Well, let me tell you why he did it. All right? This is not an excuse, it's a reason. All right? The collapse of the banking and Wall Street institution was so massive in 1929 that the rich people started yanking their gold. They started taking their $32 and going to the, $27 and going to the window and asking for the gold. They're a little farther ahead of the curve than the rest of us. All right. We don't know money at that level. All right. We know money. It's like knowing food when you go to the cafeteria. All right. We have no idea there are people sitting spending hundreds of dollars in Paris and Hong Kong eating gastronomic wonders. All right. We're sitting there looking on our tray. Oh, is this Frankfurter Day? Or macaroni and cheese, or fish sticks. It's Friday. It's got to be fish sticks. There are people eating fine. Okay. But we don't know that world. These people know that world. So they went and got their gold out. And the other thing was, because things had collapsed to such a degree, they were having to print more money than usual. Well, by 1933, the gold reserves of the United States, in relationship to how much money was in circulation, was below 40%. And there was a statute. We think the Fed has no rules. Well, the Fed sort of has no rules, but they do have some rules. And the statutory limitation of paper money in issuance was dropped below 40%. They were in trouble. So what they did was they had to do something. So they went and issued they said, we now own all the gold. We'll pay you your $27. We're fair. Okay, we're fair. All right, we're going to pay $27. And it's now illegal for you to own gold, right? And so all these Americans turned in their gold, except I think one person. And very few people know this, Bernard Baruch. And I don't have this, I don't know this for sure, but I suspect it. Why? Because there's a guy named Martin Weiss who wrote a lot. There was 15 years ago when the internet was alive with this kind of stuff, right, before gold got shoved away. One of the major writers is a guy named Larry Edelman. All right, wrote very, very well. And he wrote for a guy named Martin Weiss. And Martin Weiss had an insurance rating company. Well, Martin Weiss's father was Irvin Weiss. All right, Irving. All right, Irvin Weiss grew up during the Great Depression. All right, and the story on Irving is fascinating. Irving was just a clerk in a stock brokerage thing. All right, when the hell broke loose. But he knew people. All right. And eventually he made the friendship of a Japanese diplomat who was over here observing the stock market, because the Japanese really try and learn. Unlike the Chinese don't try and learn. The Chinese say, I know it all, screw you, this is the way it is. Japanese go, maybe I don't know it all. What do you got over there? Okay, so this Japanese diplomat was over here studying the stock market system, and he became a friend of Irving Weiss. I guess they're both young, or maybe he was older and he liked Irving. So he taught Irving how to short the market, which was dangerous at that time. You couldn't hedge your bets. It was all naked shorts, all right? However, he made a lot of money, and he said he almost lost it all at once too, but he was very lucky. Started making a lot of money, and he ended up with a group of people. He said at one point they watched, this is around 5 or 6 of them, the flow of gold, the weekly flow of gold in and out of the United States. All right. And what happened was, at one point, they saw a whole lot of gold was flowing out of the United States. And this is his comment that fascinated. He said, we knew somebody in that room was doing it. All right? Somebody in that room was doing it. And they probably knew who. And I suspect it was Bernard Baruch, the confidant of FDR. He knew there was a loophole in the confiscation. They were going to confiscate all domestic gold holdings. So he got his gold over to Europe. Would you do that? I mean, seems sort of natural. That's my surmise. But anyway.
Well, I'd probably send it to Canada.
No, I think he sent it to Europe.
Wow.
I mean, that's where they held all the gold.
Okay.
I mean, that's where the establishment was, Canada became a major gold producer later. But they were not, they were not trustworthy enough or anybody knew enough economically to have that kind of connections. In Europe, they understood gold. They always have. Right. Now, let's get back to the bitching about gold, because I want to bring something up about the FDR stole our gold. Well, you may or may not know it, but one of the reasons I gave for owning gold in the crash was what happened to Homestake Gold Mine. In the 1930s, the stocks lost around 90% of the value from top to bottom. If in 1929 you had 10% of your shares in Homestake Mining, you wouldn't have lost a penny. 10% of your shares in Homestake Mining went up over 1,000% and would have offset, it would have been a wash. Yeah. All right? It would have been a wash. Well, I want to tell you a little background about Homestake Mines. Homestake Mines was in South Dakota, on the land of the Lakota Sioux. The United States had given that land to the Lakota Sioux in return for them promising to stay on a goddamn reservation. All right? Until we discovered gold. When we discovered gold, there went the treaty. We stole the gold from them. There we are. So
The
who stole
American way.
who? That's the way of humanity. All right? So what I've always said was that this crisis now is as much a currency crisis as it is a economic crisis. The economy basically has to do with the flow of goods and services. All right. A currency crisis is very different. A currency crisis affects the common denominator of the flow of currency of goods and services, which is money. We haven't had a monetary crisis in a long, long time in the United States. The rest of the world always has monetary crises. All right. I mean, a very good friend of mine, Ralph Terry Foster, wrote a book called the Fiat Money, the History of Our Currency. And in that, he has a list of all the currencies that have failed. All right. From the last 300 years. The last 2 pages are what happened in the 1900s. I mean, everywhere. We had 2 world wars. I mean, the insolvency was extraordinary until 2000. We haven't had a crash, a currency fail since 2000. We're going to have one entry. It's going to be the world. This is where we are. This is where we are. I mean, David, I'm sort of tired about talking about this stuff for a lot of reasons, because I've been talking about it a long time. All right. And I wrote most of my articles in around 2008, 2009, 2010, and I stopped writing around 2011. One, I had nothing new to say. I'd already said it. Going back there and coming back and writing a newsletter on warning the country that you guys are drinking too much. Well, there's, I mean, if you're getting paid because of your newsletter, you'll keep writing and warning people you shouldn't drink so much. But you get tired of talking about the same thing over and over, and there's nothing new. Well, what's new is 2020. When I wrote my book, Time of the Vulture, or basically in 2007, I started writing that in 2006, by the way. All right? Mm-hmm. And I started writing that. And I don't know if you know the genesis of how I got involved in economics. because, like I said, my background, I graduated a degree in political science. I was in law school in 1966, at Hastings College of Law in San Francisco. Dropped acid, became a hippie, and dropped out. Okay? Never took an econ course in my life. And here I am with a decent reputation in the world of economics or finance or gold and silver. Well, what happened was this. In 1991, I hear these words. And these words are this. They just came to me. In times of expansion, it is to the hare the prize goes. Quick, risk-taking, and bold, his qualities are exactly suited to the times. In times of contraction, however, the tortoise is favored. Quick only to retract his vulnerable head and neck, the slow and sure is preferable to the quick and easy. There comes a time, however, when neither the hare nor the tortoise is the victor. This is the time when the passions of the bull lay buried deep beneath the rubble of economic collapse. And this is the time of the vulture. And the vulture feeds neither upon the stored up wealth of the bear or the passions of the bull. The vulture feeds upon the denial and ignorance of the ostrich. The time of the vulture is at hand. Now, when I heard those words, I was in prison. Okay? I had a 10-year prison sentence for drug dealing. I was a hippie. I mean, we're an outlaw society, and some of us that got good at it paid a price. All right? And what happened to me in that period of time, I meditated like I never would have on the outside. I don't do weights. I mean, I don't. So I meditated. And I got to places that I never would have gotten otherwise. And I don't regret the experience. But when those words came to me in 1991, I went, what? I wrote them down. They weren't my words. I wasn't sitting there thinking about economics or any of that. And those words came to me, and I wrote them down. And it started me thinking about money and economics, the Great Depression. So years later, when push came to shove, I write my book. It's read around the world. I get a reputation. And now we're talking. But what I want to say is this. I heard those words in 1991. All right? I presented those words with 148 pages of supportive documentation in 2007 at my friend Marshall, who I knew from law school. This is Positive Deviant Network for high-achieving, unorthodox thinkers. All right? Clearly, Marshall knew I was unorthodox. We were in law school together. When he was graduating, I was in jail for selling LSD. All right? 10 years later, I had presidential invitations. All right? And in fact, I never even intended to write that paper. Marshall had put this group together, and how it happened was, in 2006, now I'll tell you something even stranger. 2005 or 2000, that same year, we met a psychic, and we weren't into psychics. I mean, I knew they were there. I knew what they did. I didn't I'm a hippie, so I know stuff is real that other people don't think is real. And so we go see this guy, and he says, you're a teacher. And I go, no. I mean, at that time, David, I wasn't talking to anybody. And I just cut off. That's why I was sort of worried about you, talking to you. When you asked for an interview, my first thought was, no. No, I'm not going to talk. Last week, I cut off a 10-year relationship with some guy who interviews me just like you. It's gone. Gone. And we talked about money. All right? Because he started talking about masks. I don't care. You can ask me all my opinions I want. I got as many opinions as I want, but don't start defending your opinion to me. That's not why we're talking. All right? And I've got a very short fuse these days. All right? And I had a short fuse for a long time because I just cut off most of my relationships with a whole lot of people. I think by myself. I talk with a few people, and that's how it is. All right? So I'm sitting there, and he goes, you're a teacher. I go, no. He says, you teach. I go, no. But he's hearing things, and then he says, you know things that other people don't know. And I said, well, everybody thinks that, They know things that other people don't know. And I said, but I have no voice. I have no agreement. I have no audience. You know, it's 2005. And he says, this will soon change. People will begin seeking you out. 2005, 2006. The next year, I'm reading an article on the internet written by Daniel D. Martini. Why would I remember that name? All it was an article in the Dallas Morning Sun on the real estate market. There's tons of articles on real estate markets in every newspaper. Mm-hmm. This article caught my attention. Whoever she was incredibly perceptive. She was talking about the Fed. She was talking about interest rates. Wow. All right. So I wrote her a letter. Well, you can Google Daniel D. Martini Booth. All right. Now
I know of her.
Okay. This is before she got her reputation. This is when she was a newspaper reporter. And I wrote her. You know? And she answered back. All right. And what happened was that newspaper, my answer to her newspaper article was the genesis of Time of the Vulture. I never intended to write a book, you know, but I was a part of this very high-powered alternative, you know, think. And one of the people in that group had run a multi-billion-dollar hedge fund in London. He was in the credit, for Credit Lyonnais. He was in the Credit Traders Hall of Fame, top 50 bonds of all time. Very few people knew about him. I didn't even know what he'd done because he's so low key. But my friend Marshall introduced me to him, and he said, Darryl, this guy is very worried about the economy. This is 2005. I thought, shit, he ain't worried like I am. You know. I mean, I know that it's going to fall apart. All right. But I knew that I couldn't just say that to him. He had such a provenance in the financial community. I mean, I didn't know at the time he had lectured to the Fed and the Wall Street banks during the debt crisis in 2001 or 2002. I didn't know that. He was just one of the people in the room that we gathered and met 4 times a year. And I knew if I was going to talk to him, I better have something more than my goddamn opinion. Right. Or it's going to go to hell in a handbasket. John, what do you think? So that's when I began writing my paper. I presented it in 2007. A year and a half later, it started. And what I want to say is this. What I predicted in that paper is referred to as Time of the Vulture. I want to say something today, David. The time of the vulture hasn't begun. This is 2020. This isn't the time of the vulture. It's about to start.
So it's taken a lot longer than you thought it would.
Absolutely. Because when you see something, or that's all you begin to see. That's why I know all these Christians with the day of the rapture, when they get in their brain, it's the rapture, you know, lift me up, lift me up. My mortgage is due next month. I know the feeling, but you see it everywhere. That's the problem with having some sort of foresight, or what you think is right. You become obsessed about it. I had a conversation with my son back in the 1990s. He didn't give a shit about economics. He, however, graduated from MIT. Wow. And had the misfortune of having a father who was bananas about the economy. He had graduated from MIT. He had his life in front of him, life of promise and stuff. I'm just going to go to hell in a handbasket. You talk about something negative. I was his dad taking, you know, it's good. So he at one point he said, you know, Dad, you may be right. But he said something I never forgot. This is 1990s. He said, they've got a lot up their sleeve. I had never heard of QE at that time. I didn't know they were going to do that. That's one of the cards they had up their sleeve. He was right. It takes a lot longer than I thought. You know? Maybe it won't be 2020, 2022.
Well,
but it could be.
Is it even possible that it never falls apart because they keep pulling out these tricks nobody even
thought
of?
No way.
No way.